Okay, thanks all for joining. Tonight we are going to start a new course, new subject that is known as Victorian Poetry. Victorian poetry is the most famous literary work of the Victorian period in English literature. Victorian period is named after the Queen Victoria, after the name of Queen Victoria. After the Romantic period, Victorian period started and ended before the modern period. And normally you know that Renaissance period is also called modern period, Neoclassical period is also called modern period, Romantic period is also called modern period, Victorian period is also called modern period, and modern period is especially modern period. Okay, and different from the other periods of English literature. So this is Victorian period and Victorian poetry. Victorian poetry is very interesting, and in order to understand Victorian poetry, you must be mature. You must be mature and adult, and this is the high time and right time to realize and feel the message of the Victorian poets from their poetry. Because the purpose of modern poets or the purpose of Victorian poets is to tell you both internal situation of the society and the external situation of the society. The internal situation of human life and the external situation of human life. The problem, suffering, misery that is going on inside the heart and mind of human, that is also presented by the Victorian poets, and even the outer scenery of the society which we can see, we can notice. For example, the growth of science and technology, the growth of industry in the towns and cities. These are the visual scenes we can see, we can enjoy. But the human hearts that we cannot see, this is the matter of realization and matter of understanding. So Victorian poetry is not an easy course. This subject is not an easy subject. This subject is the easiest one when you know the features, characteristics and qualities of Victorian poetry. This is very important. Right now you are much adult. You can yourselves read your academic books. You can read Victorian poetry and you can find out the Bangla meaning in yourselves. You have this ability and capacity. You can do it. But before that, you must know the Victorian qualities, Victorian success, Victorian problems and the suffering of Victorian people. The political problem of Victorian people, the religious problem of Victorian people, the internal suffering of human life and the external suffering of human life. These are the themes and topics of Victorian poetry. Readers and students, they don't know these characteristics and qualities. That's why they cannot understand Victorian poetry, and for them this is one of the hardest subject in honors third year, along with linguistics and introduction to literary criticism. Okay, so along with introduction to literary criticism and introduction to linguistics, Victorian poetry is also the difficult one for those students who still don't know the characteristics, the purpose, the target, the destination, the message of the Victorian poets. So this is very important. So you will have 4 Victorian poets. Number 1, Alfred Lord Tennyson or Lord Alfred Tennyson, then Robert Browning, then Matthew Arnold, then Hopkins, John Hopkins. Okay, so Matthew Arnold, Hopkins, then Lord Alfred Tennyson and Robert Browning. We learned a poem of Robert Browning in honors first year. We also learned a poem of Alfred Tennyson in honors first year. The poem The Patriot is written by Robert Browning. We learned in honors first year. That was a dramatic monologue. And another dramatic monologue was Ulysses written by Lord Alfred Tennyson, we learned in honors first year. Okay, so in honors third year, we will read total 4 into 4, 16 poems. We will read total 16 poems in the syllabus of honors third year under Victorian poetry. Okay, so several poet has several purposes, and all poets are not totally Victorian. Who is called a Victorian poet, or what kind of poet can be called or can be addressed as a Victorian poet? Remember, a poet who was born during the Victorian period and composed poetry during the Victorian period and presented the necessities, the essential parts of Victorian society, the contemporary problems and success of Victorian society in their poetry, and who are agreed with the Victorian characteristics, they are called Victorian poets. Okay, so if a poet borns in the Victorian period but does not care about the Victorian people, about the Victorian features or characteristics or qualities, then he is not merely a Victorian poet. He is not totally a Victorian poet. He is not completely a Victorian poet. So among these 4 Victorian poets, Tennyson, Browning, Arnold, Hopkins, these 4 Victorian poets, among these 4 Victorian poets, Robert Browning is not a completely Victorian poet. Robert Browning is not a completely Victorian poet, because the poetry of Robert Browning is like the poetry of John Keats. John Keats didn't care about his contemporary time. John Keats composed poetry for his own sake, for the sake of poetry, not for the sake of people, for the sake of reader. Whatever the readers will think, the readers will tell about, or readers will criticize about his poetry. John Keats didn't care about those matters, but John Keats writes whatever he wanted to write. So like John Keats, Robert Browning didn't care about the Victorian society, about the Victorian tendency, about the Victorian tradition of Victorian literature or Victorian poetry. Robert Browning wrote whatever he wanted to write, and Robert Browning did whatever he wanted to do. Okay, but Victorian period is a period of success according to the political section. According to the political section, Victorian period was a successful period, but according to the religious section, according to the religious part, Victorian period was not a successful period. It was a period of conflict, it was a period of problem, it was a period of religious suffering for the Christian religion, for the Christian people. Okay, and Matthew Arnold, he also wrote poems. He presented about the ambition of human life, about the higher ambition of human life, and he brought example from the life of previous people, from the life of ancient people, and he make a comparison between the ambition of the past people and between the ambition of Victorian people, or you can say modern people. Okay, then Hopkins is a religious poet. So during Victorian period, when we were in honors second year and we were learning Victorian period from the history of English language and literature, we learned that during that time there was a great suffering regarding the Christian religion, regarding the religious faith of the people of the society, Victorian society. So John Hopkins, he wrote regarding Christian religion. He tried to bring the Victorian people under the shadow, under the flag of Christian religion, because during the Victorian period the rise of science and technology, the growth of science and technology, the establishment of industries and factories in the town, in the cities, and the tendency to earn immense power and popularity, and the loss of humanity. These compel the Victorian people to forget their religion because of one specific problem, one specific theory, that is the origin of species, written by Charles Darwin. That people didn't come from people, but people, the origin of people or the origin of human was actually monkey. Okay, the origin of people was monkey. This is the theory of Charles Darwin, and Charles Darwin wrote the book The Origin of Species. And he published this book during this Victorian period. And regarding the human creation theory by Charles Darwin, there was a great impact, there was a great influence or bad influence on the religious life of Victorian people. And in order to save those Victorian people, John Hopkins wrote some religious poems so that people can remember their creator, people can remember their God, people can worship their God, people can bring back their glorious religious life. And Lord Alfred Tennyson, that is our topic, and we will begin the Victorian period by the poems of Tennyson. Okay, so Lord Alfred Tennyson, he was all-rounder during his time. He was all in one. Lord Alfred Tennyson, he was all in one. So during the Victorian period, there were many topics. For example, the rise of painting, the value of painting, the value of different branches of arts, the value of science and technology, the value of religion, the value of romantic writings, the value of novel, the value of other things. But Lord Alfred Tennyson, he possessed all those qualities except one quality, that is the dramatic power of Elizabethan age. You can remember the Romantic period. Before this period, there was William Wordsworth, and he was a specialist, or he wrote poems mainly for nature, and he was the poet of nature. William Blake, he was a poet of fancy, and he was a critic poet. John Keats, imaginative poet of sensuousness, and Shelley, rebel poet. Lord Byron was also a critic poet and a free-minded poet, and you know that S.T. Coleridge was also a poet of fancy, poet of vision, poet of extreme imagination and creativity. Okay, so the qualities of all romantic poets you will have in the poems of Lord Alfred Tennyson. The qualities of all romantic poets you will have in the poems of Lord Alfred Tennyson. That means all the romantic elements of romantic poetry you will have in the poems of Lord Alfred Tennyson. And another most important thing, that is the source of his poetry, is actually the Greek mythology. Lord Alfred Tennyson, he collected the characters from the Greek mythology, and he composed poems by using the Greek characters. For example, we already learned a poem Ulysses. Ulysses means Odyssey, and Odyssey was written by Homer 3000 years ago. 3000 years ago, Homer wrote an epic poem, Greek epic poem, that was Odyssey. So Odyssey in English actually Ulysses. So Lord Alfred Tennyson collected the character from Greek mythology. So in honors third year, you will have 4 poems: the Luxley Hall, Eunane, Tithonus, and Lotus Eaters. Eunane, this character collected from Greek mythology. Tithonus, this character collected by Greek mythology, and in Tithonus you will have the beloved of Tithonus, who was Aurora. Aurora, she is also from Greek mythology, and you know that Lotus Eater. Lotus Eater, this is also a story collected from the Greek mythology, and Laxley Hall, this is an imaginative poet written by Alfred Tennyson. Okay, so you can easily complete the poem, but it's not important, it's not enough. You need to know more and more about Victorian poetry. Actually, what is behind the poem, what is behind the poetry of the poet. You must know this information. Then your syllabus is complete, your learning is complete. Otherwise not, it's not possible. So we are going to begin by Lord Alfred Tennyson. Let me share a simple screen. It will help you. The poetic power, the literary power of Lord Alfred Tennyson. So according to the critics, what kind of power or what kind of literary power Lord Alfred Tennyson possessed? This is very important. Okay, this is very important. So remember the names of 4 poems. Number 1, the Laxley Hall. Number 1, the Laxley Hall. Number 2, Eunane, that is in your syllabus. And number 3, you know number 3, that is Tithonus, and number 4, that is actually the Lotus Eater. Okay, number 4, that is Lotus Eater. So probably you are looking at your screen. So Lord Alfred Tennyson and his ability, look at his ability. So Lord Alfred Tennyson had the dreaminess of Spenser. So Spenser, I mean Edmund Spenser, the writer of Faery Queen, a poet of 16th and 17th century poetry, a writer of the Faery Queen, Edmund Spenser, a writer of the Shepherd Calendar, and he is called the poet of poets. Edmund Spenser is called the poet of poets, Edmund Spenser, and he is also called the father of Spenserian sonnet. Edmund Spenser is also called the father of Spenserian sonnet. So what the qualities of the literary qualities, the literary features, the literary characteristics which Spenser had during his lifetime, those qualities you will have in the poetry of Lord Alfred Tennyson. Okay, then the majesty of Milton, majesty of John Milton. John Milton was the most famous English epic poet who wrote Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained, and you learned a poem on his blindness written by John Milton in honors first year. Okay, so the majesty of Milton, so the poetic power of Milton, the qualities and virtues of Milton you will have in the poems of Lord Alfred Tennyson. So now think how much important the poems of Tennyson is. Okay, the majesty of Milton you will have in the poetry of Lord Alfred Tennyson. Then the natural simplicity of William Wordsworth. The natural simplicity of William Wordsworth, like the poet of nature William Wordsworth, Lord Alfred Tennyson simply used the natural elements in his poetry. Okay, in his poems. So you will have natural elements in the poems of Lord Alfred Tennyson. Then the fancy of Blake and Coleridge. You know the fancy of Blake and Coleridge, both are romantic poets during the romantic period. So fancy of William Blake and the fancy of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the most imaginative poet of romantic period, who used supernatural element, who used mystical element, who used also natural element. And William Blake used natural element, used supernatural element, used mystical element. Mystical elements refers to the religious information, religious element. Okay, so you will have the qualities of Blake and Coleridge in the poem of Lord Alfred Tennyson. Then the melody of Keats and Shelley, the songs, the harmony of Keats and Shelley. So as Shelley wrote poems and Keats wrote poems, like those two romantic poets, you will have the qualities of Keats and Shelley in the poem of Lord Alfred Tennyson. Okay, then the narrative vigor of Scott and Byron. So Scott and Byron, so narrative power. We learned the poem Don Juan. Don Juan is a narrative poem. Don Juan written by Lord Byron, an interesting poem and a critical poem, a criticism of English society. Criticism of English society about human characters, that is the sexual part of human life, that is porkia, the wrong judgment of society regarding marriage. Okay, so you will have such qualities in the poetry of Lord Alfred Tennyson. These are very important. So all these striking qualities are evident on successive pages of Tennyson's poetry. The only lacking thing is dramatic power of the Elizabethan age, because the Elizabethan period was the greatest time for English drama, for English play. Okay, so you will have the lacking of dramatic power in the poetry of Lord Alfred Tennyson. But Lord Alfred Tennyson wrote dramatic monologue. Dramatic monologue is a form of poetry. Dramatic monologue is a lyric poem. Dramatic monologue is a form of poetry. Dramatic monologue is a lyric poem. And we know that dramatic monologue, this form was invented during the Victorian period. This is very important. Okay, so what kind of Victorian problem has been presented by the poem of Lord Alfred Tennyson? That is very important. Okay, so in the syllabus of honors third year, in these 4 poems, the Laxley Hall, Eunane, Tithonus, Lotus Eater, in these 4 poems, the religious matter is absence. The religious matter is absence. That means it's not right that Lord Alfred Tennyson didn't write about religious problem of Victorian society. It's not right. But in your syllabus, the religious poetry of Lord Alfred Tennyson has not been added, has not been included. Okay, but don't think that he didn't wrote religious poetry. Of course he composed religious poems, but it is out of your syllabus. So in your syllabus, first of all, Laxley Hall. Laxley Hall is a poem. Laxley Hall is a poem written in dramatic form. I mean dramatic monologue. Okay, Laxley Hall, in this poem you will have love stories, you will have a regret of a Victorian young, and you will have the high ambition, the love for power and wealth of the Victorian parents. Okay, try to understand. And this situation is going on right now. You have a daughter, you are thinking that you need 10 lakhs, you need 20 lakhs, you need 2 million taka in order to marry off your daughter. And what kind of groom you need? You need a rich groom, very handsome, beardless, mustache-less, a building. He will have a building, he will have land and property, he will be the CEO of a company, or at least MD of a company. He will have money, and you will give him 20 lakhs. You will give him your daughter as a parent, as a father, as a mother. This is your target and this is your dream regarding the future of your daughter in this modern period. As I told you, Victorian period is also called a modern period. Try to understand. So if you are a poor guy, if you are a poor fellow, if you are suitable for marriage, if you are perfect for marriage, your age is perfect for marriage, your society will not allow you to marry someone because you are jobless, you are a poor fellow, you don't have land and property, you don't have money, you don't have a building house. Okay, so this is actually real picture of our society. So in the Laxley Hall, so think regarding our society, think standing in your society. Right now you are in love with someone, and your beloved family is a rich family, and you are a student of honors third year, your beloved is a student of honors first year, and you are jobless, you are on the way of a study. So a long love relationship is going on between you and your beloved. So when your relationship is exposed before the parents of your beloved, then the parents will search your job, your education and qualification, the amount of your the amount of your wealth, the position, your position in the society, your status in the society, then they will give the permission to their daughter to marry you, otherwise not. So such kind of stories added in the poem The Laxley Hall. The Laxley Hall. Okay, so this is the poem where the higher position in the society, a status, the love for wealth and power, and the value of wealth and power, and the regret for the jobless young person of Victorian society. These are the themes of the poem The Laxley Hall. Okay, so when we will read the poem Laxley Hall, we will understand everything. So next poem is actually Eunane. Next poem is actually Eunane. Okay, goddess of immortality. Eunane is the goddess of immortality. Eunane is a Greek character. Eunane, this is a poem written by Tennyson, but the character is collected from the Greek mythology, and Eunane is actually a goddess of immortality. That means she is immortal, she will never die, and she falls in love with a person. Eunane falls in love with a person, and he is actually a human, or you can say he is also a god, but not god, human. So human is actually mortal. We human, we are mortal. Our life span is very short, very limited time. After our childhood is very short, our youth is very short, our adulthood is very short. Okay, so we have different sections in our short life. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. Neither our youth is permanent, nor our adulthood is permanent, because we human are mortal. So Eunane falls in love with a person and got married him. And when the husband demanded from Eunane that please give me immortality, so Eunane, as the goddess of immortality, she gifted her husband immortality. That means now her husband is immortal. He will never die because he is immortal. So immortality, it's okay, but you are immortal, it's okay, but your youth is not immortal. So after a specific time you will become an old person, an adult person. You will lose your physical strength. You cannot satisfy your partner, you cannot satisfy your wife. But if you are human, it's okay, because you are mortal, your wife is mortal. Your youth is limited, the youth of your wife is also limited. Then you both can be satisfied easily. But if your wife is immortal with immortal youth, but you are, as a husband, you are immortal but without immortal youth, then think about your wife. She is not happy, and you are not happy because you are unable to satisfy your wife. That means your marriage life is unhappy. Go to the herbal factory. বুঝতে পারছো? So Eunane, the wife of that person, Eunane is crying because her youth is immortal, but her husband is unable to satisfy her. And her husband is crying because he is immortal, but he is old right now. He is unable to fulfill the physical desire of his wife. Okay, the physical desire of his wife. That's why the husband is crying, and the husband is demanding death, and telling his wife that please return your gift, return your immortal gift from me, and let me die. But this is a condition in the part of God, that if God gives you something, God will never take this power. So Goddess has given you immortal power. It is your fault, because you should demanded immortal age, along with the immortal youth, but you only demanded immortal age, immortal life, but you didn't demand immortal youth. So cry yourself. So husband is suffering because of his old age and immortal life. বুঝতে পারছো? So this is actually greed. Greed has been presented in this poem. Greed of human life. We human are greedy. We human are greedy. We want to lead our life like the God. Are remember we are human, we are not God. Okay? অনেক ছবিতে এরকম ডায়লগ না, হিউম্যান হ্যায় ভগবান থরি না হ্যায়, এরকম বলে না যে ওই মরবে না, ভিলেন মরবে না, বলে যে ও আদমি হ্যায় ভগবান থরি না হ্যায় কে নেহি মরেগা। বুঝতে পারছো? তো মানুষ তো মারা যাবে, কি হয়েছে ওকে মারা যাবে না, বুঝো নাই? সো don't try to be a god, be like a creator. Don't try to be like your creator. Be human being and behave as you are a human being. Don't try to be God, don't try to be creator, so it will harm you, you will suffer. So for his fault both wife is suffering and husband is suffering, and I think you have understood why the wife is suffering and why the husband is suffering. Okay, now regret is working. So in the mind of the Victorian people, in the heart of the Victorian people, there was a kind of greed to lead long life. But life is permanent, life is fixed. Our lifetime is fixed. Even our lifetime is parted into pieces: childhood, youthhood, adulthood. Nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary. So why you are dreaming to lead a long life? Why? So this is your greed of your mind, and greed is related to your mind. Okay, so this is actually the Yunnan poem written by Tennyson. Then the next poem is Tithonus. Tithonus, the beloved of Aurora. Okay, so Tithonus, he was actually the brother of Priam, brother of Priam, the king of Troy. Can you remember the Troy city? Troy Naguri, Troy city, Helen, Paris. Okay, so Helen, Paris, Troy city, তারপরে হচ্ছে যে Melenakas. These are the Greek stories from the Greek poems. তো ঘটনা কি ঘটেছিল যে প্যারিস, তারপরে প্যারিস সে মনে করো যে ট্রয়ের যুদ্ধে সে মারা যায়। ট্রয় নগরীতে ট্রয়দের মাঝে এবং গ্রিস অর্থাৎ গ্রিকদের মাঝে যুদ্ধ হয়েছিল। কেন? কাকে ঘিরে? হেলেনকে নিয়ে। হেলেন বিবাহিত একটা মেয়ে, আর এইদিকে প্যারিসও বিবাহিত একটা যুবক। সো প্যারিস একদিন ঘুমে স্বপ্নে দেখতেছেন যে তিনজন গডেস তাকে তিনটা জিনিস উপহার হিসেবে গিফট করতে চায়। একটা হচ্ছে ভার্চু, একটা হচ্ছে বিউটি, আর একটা হচ্ছে পাওয়ার। সে মনে করো বিউটি নেয়, বিউটি সৌন্দর্য। তো তার স্বপ্ন অনুযায়ী সৌন্দর্য, অ্যাকর্ডিং টু গ্রিক মাইথোলজি দ্য মোস্ট বিউটিফুল উইম্যান ইন দ্য ওয়ার্ল্ড ইজ হেলেন। তো স্বপ্নে যেহেতু সে গডেজের কাছ থেকে বিউটিকে চুজ করে, তো সে যখন গ্রিসে যায়, প্যারিস যখন গ্রিসে যায়, গ্রিসে গিয়ে দেখে যে হেলেন ইজ দ্য মোস্ট বিউটিফুল। সে হেলেনকে নিয়ে সে গ্রিস থেকে পালিয়ে ট্রয়তে চলে আসে। তো হেলেন তো বিবাহিত মেয়ে, তো গ্রিসের রাজার স্ত্রী হচ্ছে হেলেন। তো তার স্ত্রীকে তুলে নিয়ে গেছে, এটা ম্যাটার অফ প্রেস্টিজ, তার দেশের একটা সম্মানের ব্যাপার। রানীকে নিয়ে গেছে, কুইনকে নিয়ে গেছে। তো কি করছে তারা? মনে করো হারকিউলিস, তারপরে মনে করো যে আকিলিস, এরকম, তারপরে ইউলিসেস, এরকম গ্রেট মহান গ্রিকদের যে যোদ্ধাগুলো, তাদেরকে নিয়ে অনেক শিপ সহ তারা ট্রয় নগরীতে রওনা করেছে যুদ্ধের জন্য। তো ট্রয় নগরীতে দীর্ঘ 10 বছর যুদ্ধ হয় এই ট্রয়বাসীদের মাঝে এবং গ্রিকবাসীদের মাঝে। কাকে ঘিরে? এই হেলেনকে ঘিরে। তো এদিকে দেখো এই যে নিম্ফ আছে না, নিম্ফ আমরা বাংলা ভাষায় বলি যে এই যে জলপরি, বনের একজন দেবতা থাকে, সমুদ্রের দেবতা থাকে, জঙ্গলের দেবতা থাকে, সূর্যের দেবতা থাকে, চন্দ্রের দেবতা থাকে, গাছপালার দেবতা থাকে, জমিনের দেবতা থাকে। তো এগুলোকে নিম্ফ বলা হচ্ছে সাহিত্যের ভাষায়, NYMPH, নিম্ফ। বুঝতে পারছো? এগুলো হচ্ছে প্রেতাত্মা বা দেবী, দেবদেবী। তো এরকম একজন নিম্ফ অফ মাউন্টেন বা পাহাড়ের যে দেবদেবী, পাহাড়ের যে দেব, তার একটা মেয়ে ছিল। তার মেয়ের প্রেমে পড়েছিল কে? প্যারিস। প্রেমে পড়ে তারা বিবাহও করে। বুঝতে পারছো? বিবাহও করে। কিন্তু যখন এই প্যারিস আবার হেলেনকে নিয়ে পালিয়ে আসে, এরকম ট্রয় নগরীতে যুদ্ধ হয়, তার স্ত্রী সে কিন্তু সে চাইলে ট্রয় নগরীতে গিয়ে তার হাজব্যান্ড প্যারিসকে বাঁচাতে পারত। তারা একজন আরেকজনকে ভালোবাসত, তার হাজব্যান্ডকে বাঁচাতে পারত, কিন্তু সে ইচ্ছাকৃতভাবেই যায়নি। তো সে যখন গেছে ততক্ষণে প্যারিসকে তীর লেগে গেছে, প্যারিস ইনজুর্ড, এবং সে যখন যায় তার কোলেই প্যারিস মৃত্যুবরণ করে। এবং এখানে কথা হলো কি, যে এই যে রাগ, কি রাগ? বউ চলে গেছে বাপের বাড়িতে বা শ্বশুর বাড়িতে, রাগ করে চলে গেছে। এখন বউ তো বেশি দিন ওইভাবে বউকে রাখা যাবে না, একটা সেপারেট হওয়ার ব্যাপার স্যাপার আছে। তা বউ অথবা বউয়ের সুইসাইড করার সম্ভাবনা আছে, আত্মহত্যা করার সম্ভাবনা আছে। তো সময় থাকতে প্রথম দিকে যদি গিয়ে তুমি বউকে নিয়ে আসো, অথবা স্বামী মন খারাপ করেছে, স্বামীর অভিমান ভাঙাও, তুমি স্ত্রীর অভিমান ভাঙাও, বা স্বামী স্ত্রী উভয় ভুল করেছে, তাদের ভুল স্বীকার করে মেনে নাও, তাহলে তো সংসার আবার নতুন করে চলে। এত কিসের অভিমান? আর অভিমান থাকা ভালো, কিন্তু অভিমান যদি হৃদয়ে জমিয়ে রাখা হয়, তাহলে সেটা জমতে জমতে পাথর হয়ে যায়, বরফ হয়ে যায়, এটা ভাঙ্গা মুশকিল হয়ে যায়। তো তুমি ওই যে তোমার স্বামী যে আরেকজন হেলেনকে নিয়ে পালিয়ে আসছে, যুদ্ধ চলতেছে, তুমি স্ত্রী গিয়ে চাইলে ওর সঙ্গে ওকে মাফ করে দিয়ে বাঁচাইতে পারতা, সেটা তো বাঁচাও নাই। এখন কান্না করো, স্বামী মারা গেছে, বিধবা হয়ে যাও, উইডো হয়ে যাও। বুঝতে পারছো? এই সমস্ত বিষয় ভিক্টোরিয়ান পিপলের এটা একটা আভ্যন্তরীণ বিষয়, যে ঝুঁকেগা নেই, তুই গেছিস যা, ঝুঁকেগা নেই। বুঝতে পারছো? এইরকম বিষয় নিয়ে এই টিথোরাস কবিতা। তারপরে আরেকটা বিষয় হচ্ছে কি, দ্য লোটাস ইটার। বলে যে লোটাস ইটার এটা একটা ইমাজিনেটিভ ল্যান্ড। এমন একটা ল্যান্ড বলতে একটা কান্ট্রি, একটা দেশ, যেই দেশের প্রত্যেকটা মানুষ সবসময় নেশার ঘরে থাকে, নেশাক্ত অবস্থায় থাকে, ড্রাঙ্কার্ড, ইনটক্সিকেটেড, নেশাক্ত অবস্থায় থাকে। কিভাবে? যে ব্যক্তি নেশাক্ত অবস্থায় থাকে, ওই কি অলস নাকি কর্মঠরে? ও পাক্কা অলস। ওর দ্বারাই কোনো কাজকাম হবে না। ওর দ্বারাই হবে কি, খাওয়া দাওয়া আর ওয়াশরুম যাওয়া আর ঘুম আর ফুর্তি করা, এর দ্বারা তেমন কিছু হবে না যে ব্যক্তি নেশা করে। তো লর্ড আলফ্রেড টেনিসন বোঝাতে চাচ্ছেন যে সে যেভাবে কবিতাটা লিখেছেন, তাদের সে অ্যাডভেঞ্চারের মধ্যে আছে, সে ভয়াজের মধ্যে আছে। হঠাৎ একটা দ্বীপের মধ্যে সে তার শিপ দাঁড় করায় রেস্ট করার জন্য। তো সেই দ্বীপটাতে গিয়ে দেখে ওটা একটা লোটাস ইটারের দ্বীপ, অর্থাৎ লোটাস একটা গাছের পাতা, যেটার দ্বারা মনে করো নেশাক্ত একটা গাছের পাতা বা গাছের ফুল, যেটার দ্বারা খালে মনে করো ঘুম আসে, তুমি মানে স্লিপারি হয়ে যাবা, তোমার মধ্যে নেশা কাজ করবে। ওখানে সব জিনিস, সব উন্নত মানের খাবার, আনন্দ বিলাসের একটা দ্বীপ, একটা জায়গা, একটা দেশ, একটা স্টেট। তো যে স্পিকার, কবিতার যে স্পিকার, যদি ধরো যে কবি স্পিকার, অথবা যে কোনো স্পিকার একজন, যে নাবিক, যে সেইলর, যে ক্রিউ, যে ক্যাপ্টেন বা যে ক্যাপ্টেন, সে দেখলো যে আমার যে এখানে যারা ক্রিউ আছে, সঙ্গী আছে, এরা লোটাস খেয়ে এরা সবাই ঘুমন্ত, নেশাক্ত হয়ে গেছে। নেশাক্ত হওয়ার ফলে কি হয়েছে, সবাই যাচ্ছে যে এই যে অ্যাডভেঞ্চারের লাইফ, এটা কষ্টের একটা লাইফ, এখান থেকে ওখানে মারামারি, দৌড়াদৌড়ি, কাড়াকাড়ি, সমুদ্রের ঝড়, এটা ওটা, বা বাস্তব জীবনের কষ্ট, দুর্দশা, সংসার খরচ, এটা করো ওটা করো, চাষাবাদ করো, চিকিৎসা পানি, কত কি, গুল্লি মারো, এই দ্বীপেই থাকে যাও, খাওয়া দাওয়া আর ফুর্তি করো, নেশা করো আর ঘুমাও, যাওয়ার দরকার নেই। তো সেই থেকে এই স্পিকার তার লোকদেরকে ইন্সপায়ার করতেছে যে এখানে থাকা যাবে না, এখান থেকে চলো, জীবনের অনেক পথ আরও বাকি আছে, অনেক কাজ করতে হবে, অনেক রেসপন্সিবিলিটি আছে, অনেক ডিউটি আছে, এভাবে থেমে থাকলে হবে না, এভাবে নেশা করে থেমে থাকা যাবে না, চলো ফিরে যাই। যেমন ইউলিসিস কবিতায় দেখো নাই যে বৃদ্ধ হয়েছি তো কি হয়েছে রে, ঘরে বসে থাকতে পারবো না, আই উইল ড্রিঙ্ক লাইফ টু দ্য লিস, মানে জীবনের প্রতিটি অংশ আমি এনজয় করবো, একদম যুবক থেকে একে বৃদ্ধ পর্যন্ত। আমি আবার সফরে যাব, আমি আবার অ্যাডভেঞ্চারে যাব, হতে পারে এই অ্যাডভেঞ্চারে গিয়ে আমি মৃত্যুবরণ করব, আমার সঙ্গীরা মৃত্যুবরণ করবে, আমি ফিজিক্যালি বৃদ্ধ হয়ে গেছি কিন্তু মনোবল আমার এখনও স্ট্রং আছে। আমি হয়তো মারা যাবো আর ফিরে আসতে পারবো না, কিন্তু আমি আমার জার্নি স্টপ করতে পারবো না। তো জীবনের আমাদের অনেক রেসপন্সিবিলিটি আছে, অনেক দায়িত্ব আছে। এগুলোকে ভুলে গিয়ে আরাম আয়েশের জিন্দগি বা লাক্সারিয়াস লাইফ, বিলাসবহুল লাইফ লিড করার কোনো প্রয়োজন নাই। কারণ তোমার ওপর সংসারের দায়িত্ব আছে, পরিবার আছে, পিতামাতা আছে, সবাই আছে, এগুলো বুঝতে হবে। বুঝতে পারছো? তো স্টেপ বাই স্টেপ আমি একটা কবিতা একদিনই শেষ করে দেবো, কি বলো? স্মৃতিদাস, আফরিনা, তারপর লাবণী, আজিদা, রাখা, রুস্তম, জাহিদুল।
জি ভাইয়া, ক্লাস খুব ভালো লাগছে, হ্যাঁ ধারাবাহিকতা